And joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show of CBS Sports, and one of the greatest special teams player, one of the greatest players in the history of the Buffalo Bills, Steve Tasker, joining me. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing good, Rich. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet. So, man, is Rex's job really on the line here? I mean, you hear the whispers. I mean, Jim Kelly even said in the offseason, although when he came on the show, he said that maybe his words were taken a little bit more harshly than they were intended, that Rex needs to make the playoffs this year. Is his job on the line in Western New York,
I don't think so. I think it'd be a mistake to do that. I don't think Rex is looking over his shoulder. Now, certainly, if Rich, like everything, if they go out and hang a 3-13 up, yeah, I mean, that's probably not acceptable unless there's a good reason for it. But, you know, they were 8-8 last year. They dropped a couple of games. They had some when Tyrod Taylor got hurt for a couple of games last year, they dropped both those games that they needed to win. But I think if this is a team, I mean, what are you going to do if it happens in one of those years where you go 11-5 and get shut out of a wild card? That happens every handful of years, you know. So if they put one of those seasons up, of course, if you don't make the playoffs, you're not going to lose your job because you went 11-5 or 10-6 and get shut out. But certainly, this is a team that needs to play well and be competitive every week and be in the playoff conversation late. They expect to be, and I have every reason to think they will be. So I do not think Rex is on the hot seat unless the unforeseen happens and the team really tanks, which I don't think is going to happen.
But the one thing that even Jets fans would attest to is that one thing that Rex Ryan's teams were not. There were holes that certainly offensively challenged from time to time, because Rex even admitted when he was with the Jets that he was focused on the defensive side of the ball. One thing they rarely were uninspired, and that's what they looked like in week one. Certainly, since, and it's something we're going to play for my listeners and viewers after we hang up, Rex's speech to the team leading off in training camp that was revealed over the weekend. For them to play the way that they did in week one after that, it leaves you wondering if they are buying what he's selling, Steve.
Yeah, it's crazy, but even in New York, when their roster was, you know, pretty much gutted from when he first got there and went to the championship game twice in his first couple of years with New York, the roster was gutted. Even though they didn't have the talent they did early in his career in New York, they played hard for Rex every week. They really did. We did him a couple of times late, even at the very end. In fact, I did with CBS. I did his last game as Jets head coach. Turned out to be his last game, and they played hard for the guy. And the guys who came in and spoke to us in the production meeting loved Rex. They wanted to play hard for him. So it was a little bit disconcerting, particularly since it was an opener, Rich, to have the Bills go out, and particularly on the offensive side, look flat from the word go. Now, defensively, they only gave up 13 points. You're supposed to win games when you do that. But offensively, which is kind of the way everybody takes the temperature of the team, you know, they looked cold at best. They did not show up very well. And it started with their quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. He self-admittedly didn't play his best game. But the uninspired nature of the effort they put out against Baltimore last week really had some people in a state of alarm here in Buffalo.
Steve Tasker joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Jim says that Tyrod Taylor could be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Is he just waving the flag there in Buffalo, or is he?
No, I don't think so. I think it was interesting that Tyrod, for a lot of people, was kind of a throw-in. When they thought Matt Castle was going to come in and win the quarterback job away from E.J. Manuel, and they said, oh, by the way, we got this Tyrod Taylor guy. So they come in for this three-way training camp competition for quarterback, and literally from day one, Tyrod Taylor was head and shoulders above the other two guys. He was the guy from day one. He just separated himself. He's got a presence about him in the huddle that other guys want to rally around. He's a great athlete, got a great arm, throws a very good deep ball, which is kind of head-scratching because they hardly did that at all in week one of this season. They led the league in big play touchdowns last year by a wide margin and then didn't go to that at all during the game in week one. But, yeah, there's every reason to believe Tyrod Taylor has a really bright future as the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. And for a lot of reasons that don't have anything to do with week one and the way he performed.
Well, let's touch the third rail for the Jets, and that's Darrelle Revis maybe not being an island anymore. A.J. Green, who was my guest in the second hour, just absolutely owned him. last week. What do you make of Darrelle Revis' status as a shutdown corner now in the NFL,
well,
Steve?
It's interesting. I mean, it's going to happen sometime. I mean, it happened to Deion Sanders, and he may be the best cover corner of all time. I mean, he couldn't get it done after a while either. But let me tell you this. I mean, the last two games, and it's a little bit of a trend. The last two games Darrelle Revis has played, the last game of last year against Sammy Watkins here in Buffalo, or in New York, and then this first game, Week 1, A.J. Green and Sammy Watkins caught a lot of footballs and had a lot of yards against him. He has not looked good in his last two regular season outings. And for a corner, if you're in that boat, you're going to keep getting thrown at until you prove you're still the guy. So he may get that opportunity this week to give one last hurrah about being the number one guy he's been for a while. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are raising their eyebrows over the production he's given up in his last two regular season games.
What do you think happens tonight, Steve?
Well, I think the Bills are probably going to play a little bit better offensively, even though they're going to go against a much better defensive football club than they did in Week 1 against Baltimore. I think when the Bills look at their performance last week, it's about missed opportunities. The opening play of the game offensively for the Bills, they miss a wide open Robert Woods down the slot, absolutely dropped coverage, wide open, and Tyrod Taylor never saw him. They dropped an easy pick six right into the chest of Ronald Darby. So there's two touchdowns that they left on the field, and so it's about missed opportunities for the Bills. But this Jet team, I think it's about their defense. They are very salty, and they're playing well. But the Bills know the quarterback of the Jets very well in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it's going to be. I think this may be a low-scoring game. But I think it's going to come down to a mistake by one of the offenses that tips the balance. I think this is going to be a low scoring. It's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be a 35-37 game. I think it's going to be a 13-10 game, and somebody's going to make a big mistake to put it away.
Steve Tasker joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show before taking off for Detroit, along with Andrew Catalon and Steve Berline on that broadcast on CBS, America's most watched network. See, I know where the bread's buttered, Steve. Tennessee at Detroit. What are you seeing on film about these two teams from week number 1 that might manifest itself in their final result in week 2, Steve?
Well, Detroit, the thing I see about Detroit on both sides of the ball, one is on defense, they're just flat tackling better than they did a year ago. They're not. The first guy to the ball is making the tackle. That's a big step forward there, and that's the makings of a good defense. If you got a guy that gets to the football, he doesn't miss a tackle. And on the offense, it could be that their offense is going to be a lot more efficient without Calvin Johnson in it because Matt Stafford's throwing it to everybody now. The problem is, Rich, and you know this, when it comes down to a point where you need a guy to make a play, you don't have a Calvin Johnson that you're going to say, okay, you can't guard him one-on-one, and you can't guard him when he's open when he's not open. They don't have that guy. So that's going to be the difference. So I think the Lions are going to be more efficient offensively without Calvin Johnson, but they're going to lack that extra gear that they had with him.
Well, how about this, Steve? How about Theo Riddick being that guy? I'm serious. I'm not joking.
Well, listen, he can catch it like nobody else. He was the number 1 running back in the league last year coming out of the backfield, and he could be that guy. But they're going to have to find that out. I think it's too early to say, yeah, he's the guy. Now, he may be the guy they go to first, and if he keeps coming through, you know how it is, Rich. If you got an investment, keep throwing money at it if it keeps giving you a good return. And that's where I think Theo Riddick is the first option on that list of guys you're going to have to find.
And Mariota,
I agree with you.
Mariota struggled last week, Steve.
Well, he did, but I think one time he had he had a bad pick six on pressure when he had pressure.
That turned the game.
He had 3 turnovers. One was on a quarterback option where, and I hate that. I mean, I love their philosophy in Tennessee. 2 big running backs, Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray. But I hate their play-action game off their big running backs. They seem to do this misdirection stuff a lot with Mariota, and then when they try to play action off of it, he gets pressure right away because they're always running after the quarterback because of the quarterback option thing. So he never has a free moment on play action to throw it. That's what led to the 2 interceptions, and it's also what led to the fumble that cost him 2 touchdowns and a field goal, or at least a field goal attempt last week. So Yeah, they turned it over. They were actually handling Minnesota very well in the first half, and then the turnovers crushed them in the second half. But they're not that far off. Tennessee's not. But if they turn it over with their philosophy of playing offense like they are, they're just not built to come back and get back in it. So that's what bit them last week.
Before I let you go, Steve Tasker, you were one of 94 players and coaches mentioned on NFL Network last night on the coverage of being eligible for enshrinement in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and up for it. I mean, you and Brian Mitchell. Let's pound the table for special teams players here.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Let's
go. I'll tell you that. I have some real questions about my.
Oh, come on! Don't be humble. Don't be humble.
I don't have any question about Brian Mitchell. That guy belongs in. He has got more yards behind his name than just about anybody else who didn't play quarterback. Maybe one. Jerry Rice has more yards than Brian Mitchell. Anybody else that does is a quarterback. That guy got it done really well, and he did it a lot of different ways. I am all about Brian Mitchell getting in. I'm with you on that one. And it's easy to, I'm an obvious conversation because I play a position where nobody's in the Hall of Fame in that position, and I'm kind of the guy that has the most notoriety. I was on the best team. I was actually just on the best team playing special teams. But it's a hard conversation. It's a hard sell to convince somebody, a guy who like me, who was not good enough to play regular down and distance, but actually filled a role on a good team.
Yeah, you did.
To be in the Hall of Fame. It's a tough sell.
Well, you filled a great role on a great team, Steve, and we just heard why there is no I in Steve or Tasker right there.
Well,
we just heard that.
There's a great bunch of guys. Bruce is getting his jersey retired tonight at halftime, and there's a bunch of guys back in town, and me being the local Buffalo guy who stayed here, I'm the cruise director for the week, so... it's good. They're a great bunch of guys. It's wonderful to see them back in town. They're here for Bruce's jersey retirement, and it just reminds you of how special and magical some of these teams can be in the NFL. It's fun to be a part of.
Steve, thanks so much. Call back in shortly, okay? Love to have you back on.
All right, Rich, anytime.
You got
Thank
at Steve Tasker 89.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.